Hello everybody, this is Hammer Striker here. Got a couple generations of Walthers on the table, and then a Canik, which is based on one of the earlier generations of the Walther. Please don't forget to check out our website. Go to our affiliates page. You'll find discount codes for things like Mantis Axe and Core belts. You'll find a link that you can sign up for Big Daddy Unlimited. They actually have things in stock and usually at a lower price than other places. Link to that cool little bore light that we use for lighting up the barrels. Use those links. It will often save you money, never will cost you any additional money, and helps the channel. Thank you. So we'll start with all the way down here at the end. This is a Walther P99, and this is the AS model, which is, of the P99 series, is the one that has survived the longest. Then right next to it, I have a Walther PPQ. This is the SC, which is, other than the steel frame ones, the only surviving member of the PPQ line. They've kind of replacing the PPQ with the PDP. And I have the Canik TP9 Elite Subcompact, which is fundamentally based on the P99, even though it has evolved from it and they've made some changes. So kind of one of the things we're going to show, if you like the P99 or you like the PPQ SC, and those are kind of being phased out and becoming harder to find, they still live on in the Canik. So I'm going to compare the three of them. So we'll pick up the P99 first and make sure that it is, of course, unloaded. This one does have a paddle release and it's unloaded. Now the P99 was a full line of pistols when Walther came out with it. So it had full-size compacts and everything else. This is the C version, which is the subcompact. So it's effectively a double stack magazine with 10-round capacity. And there was also a 15-round available, so you could get all 10s if you lived in a restricted state or you wanted that ultra flush 2-finger grip with a really short grip so you could hide it, and a 15-round magazine available. This lived on for a very long time. This particular one has a unique trigger. It's the anti-stress or AS trigger, which as you pull it back, it stages and then it kind of locks in that position, and then it has a very, very short, crisp break. And I'm going to demonstrate all the triggers of these side by side. But at one point in time, this was the trigger to compare to. But one of the things that's unique about this gun and did not survive into either the Canik or the PPQ is it's also a double action. So you have double strike capability. It's about a 9-pound double action and then about a 4.5-pound single action. So we put that guy down and move towards the next one in the evolution of life, which is this Walther PPQ SC. And this has basically the same trigger as a PPQ, which wasn't quite as light as the P99, but is really the striker fire trigger to beat. That's kind of the de facto standard in triggers. Minimal take-up, nice short crisp break. This gun, when it came out, generated a lot of controversy. There's some polymer components up in here that were used to reduce the weight, reduce the cyclic weight of the slide and the overall weight of the gun. There were some concerns about durability on it. We actually did a 2,000 round test on this one before ammo prices went crazy, and that would have cost a fortune. And of course it was still expensive even at that point. And 2,000 rounds in, not a single malfunction. Now one caveat on this, if you look back at our video history on this gun, we got one of the very, very, very first early models of it, and it did have a problem with that componentry. And when I called Walther, they recognized that there was a problem in the early ones. They took the gun back and replaced it. So this is the replacement, and that's the one we did the 2,000 round test on. It's proven out to be quite durable. It's got a lot of cool features, and of course, again, I'm going to go through each one of them in detail, but I want to kind of whip through them first. The other thing this has is a 10 and a 15 round magazine available. One caveat with this is you do need to make sure that if you use a longer magazine that you use a sleeve. So you can't just take and let the longer magazine hang out like that, because when you go to slam it in, you can damage the mechanism. It's one restriction or limitation with this particular gun. And even though this one is a PPQ, one caution too is that regular PPQ magazines fit just a little bit loose in it on top of the need for the sleeve. So there's a little less magazine compatibility with this than you might have wanted. Now onto the Canik. This is, the Caniks in general were based on the original P99, and then they kind of went their own way, started making their own design evolution and changes. And then this is the latest in that evolution. This is a very nice pistol. It's light and small for a double stack. None of these guns really kind of compete with the super high capacity micro compact 9s that are all the rage right now, things like the P365 and Shield Plus. These don't compete with that. These are more along your Glock 26, double stack, 10 plus rounds depending on the gun, regular subcompact concealed carry guns. This comes with a 12, a 15 with a sleeve, and a 17 round available. Now, this one is supposed to come with a 12 and a 15. Ours came with two 10s. So I don't have a 50, or I'm sorry, two 12s. So I don't have a 15 to show, but effectively what it would be is it would kind of hang down about like that, and there would be a sleeve that fully integrates so that you would get at that point you get a 3-finger grip on it. This one is the only one in the lineup that is optics ready. You remove this plate, and there's a small assortment of optics that'll fit on it, like the Shield RMSC. The SMS2 supposedly will fit, or the Hollow Sun 507K. So there's a few of the micro red dots that'll fit on it. This is the only one also that doesn't have any kind of dots on the rear sight, which normally I kind of hate that. But what I did find with this one is there's enough of a gap. I was actually able to shoot it well. Actually able to shoot this fairly easily well. So it didn't really hurt much to have the blackout. From a sights perspective, if I go to the PPQ, it's got the same basic 3-dot sights that you're used to seeing on the Walther PPQs. Really easy sights to use, no optics capability. And if I go to the P99, and of course this well predates the concept of putting optics on a gun, it has 3-dot sights. And that little thing that you're seeing right here is a decocker. So if I'll go ahead and drop the magazine to show you that. This is the only one that has that because it is the only one that's DASA. I can decock the gun and now it's a double action. So it's not a cutout for putting an optic on it. This is not optics ready either. But you have basically the same as a PPQ, a nice, relatively easy to use 3-dot sights. Striker status indicator, and a striker status indicator on the Canik. A lot of features on these three guns, and we've got all the magazines out of them, so they're a little bit easier to work with. And kind of hold them up side by side so that you can see the slides in comparison. It may take me a second to get it all kind of staged. The Canik and the PPQ SC have front serrations and really defined rear serrations. The P99c doesn't, but it does have a bit of a shelf. If you've got stronger hands, you can grab that shelf and that'll be good enough to cycle it. But on the other two, they actually have dedicated serrations to make that easy. All of them have at least a single slot rail. So we've got a single slot on the P99, a 2-slot on the PPQ SC and the Canik, so that you can attach lights and lasers and other toys and accessories. All of them have relatively large trigger guards, so with gloved hands. The P99 and the PPQ have some serrations on the front of the trigger guard, which are lacking on the Canik, but overall they all have really nice, easy to use trigger guards. The PPQ and the Canik are the more modern, or not necessarily modern, but US preferred button releases, and the P99, like the early PPQs, is a full-length paddle. One important thing about this full-length paddle is it's easy to get to, and you can come in from behind the trigger to get to it. So you're not really getting anywhere near activating or touching the trigger, and it's by its nature ambidextrous. It's on both sides. And there's a little bit of serration so your fingers don't slip off. I found these longer paddles that were popular on the Walthers to be really easy to use, easy to get to, with no fear that you're going to inadvertently activate the trigger. But they really just aren't popular in the US. They just never really gained popularity. People are used to the button release, want the button release, so there was always a clamor for it. In the later generations of the PPQ, and of course moving forward into the PDP, the paddle releases are gone and they're replaced with button releases. So let's go ahead and look at the triggers, and we'll begin back here with the P99. So what we've got on this is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a DASA, which is unique among the three of these. So in double action mode, it's about a 9-pound trigger. It's smooth all the way back, a little stacking at the back, and then it breaks. And then of course it goes into single action mode, and whether it was as a result of single action or double action, there's the reset. Almost a non-existent movement of the trigger, a hair of take-up, and you're back on that really short, crisp, about a 4.5-pound wall. Now if I put it into single action mode, Then I do the take up. Whether I do that or not, I can pull it down and let it lock in that backward position, or I can just stroke the whole way. But if I do that, then I have this minimal take up onto the wall, then a short crisp wall. And I can show you the reset again. If you blink, you miss it. That's the entire reset. And then again, back to that 4.5 pound trigger. Of all the guns that I've handled, this one from a trigger pull, trigger weight, reset is just awesome. The only thing I did find a negative on this trigger is it's significantly curved. And I got a little bit bigger fingers, so that when I pull back on it, it has a tendency to want to put the force, or the weight, right here on this part of my finger, because of the way the trigger is curved. So I end up, instead of putting the force on the pad of my finger, I ended up with it down here. And that does hurt just a little bit. It's not enough for me to dislike the gun, but I do notice that the other guns have a little bit more straighter triggers, a little less curvature, and they're more comfortable on the finger to pull. But you really can't go wrong with the P99. The next step of the evolution was the PPQ SC. Now this one is a typical striker gun, so there's no DASA, it's just all one mode. There's your take up. Short crisp break. Comes in right around 4.5 pounds, maybe just a hair over. And that little bit longer, but still excellent short reset. A little bit of take up to get back on the wall. And then again, that really short crisp break. Then back to that only ever so slightly longer reset. Overall, the PPQ trigger has really become the standard to beat. A lot of guns get close, very few guns can match it. It's really an awesome trigger. And if I put that guy down, we'll move along to the Canik. Like the PPQ, this is a striker, so it's only one mode. A little bit of take up, a kind of almost two-stage take up. So I take up here real light, then I start to take up again and hit a wall, and then a 4.5 pound break. Reset is similar to the PPQ, maybe just a hair shorter. Almost no take up, just a fine movement, and you're back on the wall. I found this trigger really easy to use. There's your reset again, and then again, that would be all the way out. But it is unique in having this somewhat of a two-stage feel. Full take up and then a little more take up with, we could feel the weight. You can feel the weight difference between here and here. So it's very repeatable. And then the break. I've gone ahead and lined them up side by side so you can see the relative size difference between them, or almost lack of relative size difference. They are slightly different, but not so much that it's going to make a difference in whether you can conceal carry one or the other. The Canik is the largest. It's 6.7 inches long compared to 6.6 for the other two. Its height is 4.6 versus 4.4 and 4.3. So we're talking tenths of an inch in the difference in height. So it's not going to make a significant difference in whether or not it's going to fit somewhere. The Canik is the heaviest at 24.8 ounces. The P99 comes in next at 20.8, which I'm sorry, I got my finger on the wrong one. P99 at 20.8, and then 18 ounces for the PPQ SC. And again, they went to a great effort to lighten the PPQ SC. So if you're looking for the absolute lightest gun, the SC, find one of those somewhere, and that'll give you the absolute lightest gun. But the Canik is well within the realm of the weights that you're typically getting, and actually a little lighter than a lot of the concealed carry guns. If I turn them around this way, so that you can see the relative thickness of them, the Canik is the thickness at 1.45, or thickest at 1.45. The PPQ and the P99 are 1.3, but again, it's a little over a tenth of an inch. That may make more of a difference than the thickness inside the waistband. A tenth of an inch can matter, but really, honestly, it's not going to be enough to make or break whether or not you can carry it. So all three of these are your really good examples of a standard double stack subcompact, that form factor that's been around for quite a while. And any one of the three of these that you manage to find, the Canik is current production, these are going to be a little harder to find, unless you happen to find one used, is going to be able to give you the size form factor that you're looking for. From an MSRP standpoint, new, they're going to go the opposite direction. This one had an MSRP of $699, then $559, and then $439. But when the P99s were becoming hard to find, you often found them in the 3 and 4 territory. The Canik is current production. You can find it today regularly in that price range. And the PPQ SC, you may pay a little more for one if you can find one, simply because it was a fairly popular gun for a period of time. But any of these are going to be $500 or less, with the Canik being able to be most reliably purchased under that MSRP. All of them are really nice guns. I had looked at Caniks before, and one of the things I found about Canik, so I'll point this out just in case you've had a similar issue, is the way this is shaped on most Caniks hits this knuckle. So when I hold it, I'm getting pressure on this knuckle in an uncomfortable way. This one doesn't do that. There must be just enough of difference in the way the grip is set up, possibly the replaceable back straps, that eliminate that for me. So I haven't bought a Canik in the past, not because I didn't like them, but because every one I picked up would kind of press wrong here. This one didn't. So when I picked up a Canik that looked nice, it's got a nice, really nice pattern to it, nice color scheme, and it didn't feel uncomfortable in my hand, I bought it because I wanted to give it a try, and I'm really glad I did. I found it was very easy to shoot well. Recoil was very manageable, really nice trigger. Overall, kind of can't go wrong with it. You could search these out. You may be able to find new old stock. You may be able to find used on the PPQ and the P99c. But if you're looking for this type of a gun, you really want a PPQ or the P99c and you can't find one, if you go with the Canik, you're going to get basically the same gun at actually probably a lower price. And all of the guns that I've got here in this lineup have at some point when they were in production had full and compact sizes. PPQ, the P99 when it was in full production, and of course the Canik still in production, all of its versions. PPQ is not completely gone, it's being replaced by the PDP. At some point they may come out with a PDP SC. Till then, the PPQ SC is the only one that fills that subcompact, double stack subcompact realm for Walther anyway. Beyond that, if you like our videos, please give us a thumbs up, share, subscribe, click that bell up there to be notified if you do. Check us out on Facebook, Patreon, Instagram, Twitter, kind of everywhere. Thank you.